So let's say you own a home in the Greater Toronto area and you're technically worth over $1 million. You're a millionaire, congratulations. But somehow your quality of life hasn't really changed in the past 10 years. You feel trapped, and today I want to explain exactly why that happens and how Kelowna might be one of the better few places in Canada where you can actually escape it. So let me describe a kind of a situation that I've heard versions from dozens of Toronto area buyers, which is you bought a semi-detached home in the East York area of Scarborough or Mississauga in 2010 or 2013. You paid $550,000 for it. And today that home is worth 1.2 or 1.4 million. So you're rich on paper, but your net worth hasn't really grown as much significantly. So here's what hasn't really changed is probably your commute, your stress level, your relationship with your neighborhood, maybe your family, the size of home that your family lives in particularly, and the amount of outdoor access that you have on a typical week probably hasn't increased, probably decreased with the amount of construction that's going on, and also just your sense of hope. So here's the trap, is that to move anywhere better than the Greater Toronto area, you need to spend at least 1.5, 2 million plus, or at least you're thinking. And to downsize, it doesn't really help either because a small GTA home still costs 900 to 1.1 million. And so the equity that you have is locked in the market where everything costs kind of relatively the same amount. You are equity rich, which is awesome, but you're lifestyle poor, and you've been told implicitly that the trade-off is just part of living in Canada's economic center. But I want to tell you that there's a version of this story where you get to unlock that equity, where you take that time machine that's been grinding for you on your behalf for the past 12 years, you cash it out, you move it somewhere with dramatically much lower real estate prices, and then you transform your actual lived experience. And that's the thesis about moving to Kelowna. So let's run this concretely. You sell your GTA home for 1.3 million, and after your agent commissions, say roughly 45,000 to 55,000 at 3.5 to 4% with your mortgage payoff and your legal and moving costs, let's say you net 1.1 million in cash proceeds. Now, let's say you made that move to Kelowna, BC. So scenario one is just the complete lifestyle reset. You buy a 4-bedroom detached home in Upper Mission, Kelowna with outstanding lake views. You got a relatively new home. It's excellent for the school zone. You get in for 1.1 million. You buy it in cash, no mortgage, zero housing payment beyond the property tax. You have that $5,000 to $6,000 a year and also your utilities. And then I just want you to let that kind of sink in for a second. You went from a Toronto mortgage to a $0 mortgage payment with $4,000 to $5,000 a month in cash flow freedom every single month. That's scenario one. But scenario two is, let's say you buy well and you keep the cash. So you buy $850,000 Kelowna home, you put $700,000 down, your mortgage is $150,000 at 4.75% over 25 years. It's approximately $850 a month. So you get to keep that $400,000 in investments or deploy it in some other capital investment. Now you went from that Toronto home to a mortgage of $850 a month, and you have $400,000 in liquid wealth and another investment. Okay, let's talk about another scenario where you get the full maximized investment approach, where you buy an $800,000 home, you put say $500,000 down, you keep $600,000 deployed in a diversified investment portfolio. With your mortgage payment, let's say it's approximately $1,700 a month in this case, combine that with investment returns, you fundamentally kind of restructured your financial life altogether. I'd say honestly, every one of these scenarios represents a life that is very objectively different from the one that you're living in the Greater Toronto area. There's probably more financial freedom, there's probably more space, and there's probably more lifestyle per dollar as well. I want to be totally direct here because I think the Toronto to Kelowna conversation sometimes gets glossed over in the real estate trade-offs, but I want to talk about here with kind of the career market. So Toronto is Canada's financial and business capital. It's the New York of Canada. And if your career is in finance, banking, corporate law, consulting, media, film, fashion, tech, at the enterprise level, then Toronto's job market is categorically very different from Kelowna's. Now, if you are a remote worker or if you can carry your income, this is not an issue. But if you're job dependent on a Toronto specific industry, then this is going to be a serious consideration and option or potential decision you're going to have to make. Let's talk about the Toronto social infrastructure. If you've already built a life there with your friends, your family, your church or your synagogue or community or whatever, then, and also maybe let's talk about your kids' school communities and friendships that they made, and also the other friends and parents that you met along with your kids. These things are not just kind of abstractions, they are the actual fabric of your life. If you're going to be moving 4 to 5 hours away, it's going to change the frequency and the nature of those relationships. Some families manage this beautifully, but for others, it's the thing that kind of brings them back. Talking about some of the cultural and culinary differences, Toronto is probably one of the most diverse cities in the world with the food, the art, the communities, the cultural events, and it's very real and it matters to a lot of people who've kind of built their identity around that. Kelowna is growing very fast and does have a lot more culture than many people expect, but it's nowhere near or close to Toronto by any means. Also, regarding the healthcare and the specialists, Kelowna has a very solid healthcare infrastructure for the general needs. Toronto has world-class hospital networks and specialists that are very in-depth and simply doesn't exist of a city of 180,000 people here in Kelowna. And I'm not just listing these to talk you out of anything per se, I'm listing them because the people who actually make this transition most successfully are the ones who go into the move with clear eyes and fully aware of kind of what they're walking into. And they've acknowledged the trade-offs and they've actually decided that Kelowna is worth it to them. And they don't just kind of get caught up on fairyland ideas that may not be actually truthful. Now let me tell you what Toronto cannot give you. One is the physical space and the human cost with that. A detached home in Kelowna with the backyard, 30 minutes from a ski hill, 10 minutes from a lake, in a city where traffic exists but it doesn't consume your life. This doesn't exist at any price point in Toronto. You also have tremendous outdoor access kind of into your daily life, and this is Kelowna's most underrated feature. It's not, oh, we drove 3 hours to go camping once in July, but it's actually just like that daily access to the natural world. Biking trails from outside your house, the lake reachable in 10 minutes, hiking before work calls, skiing on a Saturday without making it a 2-day trip. This changes people's lives and it's amazing. Another big one is the pace. Toronto runs at a speed that extracts something from you that, like the commutes, the density, the competition, the cost pressure, it's a tax on your nervous system. But Kelowna's pace is, it's not slow, but it's more relaxed. People who move here regularly describe the first year as kind of unexpectedly restorative. They get rejuvenated by just the environment and the energy here. Another big one is that the summers here are very reliable. Toronto summers are beautiful and very unpredictable, but Kelowna, their summers, we get 2,000 hours of annual sunshine. Lake culture from May to October. It's not a small thing. It's something that kind of takes up a good chunk of your life here because you're always going to be outside hanging out by the beach, especially when it's plus 35 degrees out. The Toronto equity trap is most solvable for those remote workers, and this group is growing very fast here in Kelowna. If you work in tech or finance or consulting, creative marketing, or any field that has matured into remote first, then your Toronto salary is probably portable. But if you take that $140,000 to $180,000 income to Kelowna, living on Kelowna costs, the financial transformation is going to be quite beneficial to you. This is the buyer profile that I work with most often from Toronto, the remote professional or hybrid professional who has dedicated or who has decided on spending that $1.5 million on a semi-detached home to be 50 minutes closer to an office that they go to maybe say twice a week is a very poor trade-off. If you're in this category, it's not just theoretically, but it's actually confirmed with remote work. The Kelowna move is very worth modeling seriously if that is something that you could see yourself doing. So who should consider this move? Well, you are a serious candidate for this move if 1, your income is portable, remote or semi-remote confirmed, 2, you have 10 plus years of that Toronto ownership and significant equity in your pocket, 3, you're at a life transition where kids are maybe hitting the school age or approaching mid-career or looking at pre-retirement, or maybe you're just feeling like Toronto isn't giving you enough lifestyle for what you're paying, and 4, let's say you visited Kelowna or the Okanagan generally and then it resonated with you. It wasn't just a vacation, but it was a place that you could see yourself living. And then 5 is that your extended family situation gives you the flexibility to be 5 plus hours away on a flight. You should wait or reconsider if your career is deeply in the Toronto area, if your family ties make that physical proximity essential, or if you've never actually spent any real time in Kelowna across the different seasons and don't know what it's like in the fall or the winter time, then you need to explore that. The Toronto equity trap is very real, and for the right person, remote workers, equity-rich Greater Toronto Area homeowners, the family ready who wants a different chapter, then Kelowna is one of probably the more compelling exits available in Canada right now. The math makes sense, the lifestyle upgrade is real, the trade-offs are very real as well, but for the people who've done this with open eyes, I've watched it just transform their life. So if you want to run your specific Greater Toronto Area equity against some of the home prices in here in Kelowna and build the actual financial model for your situation, then feel free to book in a call through my calendar link below. I do this conversation regularly. I'd love to give you the honest picture either way. So feel free to hit that subscribe button if you did get any value from this video and you want to stay up to date with any other future videos. Really appreciate you watching, and I'll see you in the next one.